Oh, really? Today's talk was inspired by a few things said in the last video. The mercenary spirit. Okay. And in a certain sense, it comes down to uh, the erroneous awareness and use of debits and credits. Uh, when did they come about? Why are they used? Why do we even consider such a notion? As far as I know, debits and credits came into being with the Scorpion King of Egypt. He had gone around and conquered a bunch of lands and built this very large agricultural society. So they had a lot of grain and a lot of grain stored away. And they needed, or he declared it was necessary to keep track of it. And it came up with a system of debits and credits in time. And that's what the first hieroglyphs were about, according to what has been read. Don't know for sure, the story may be completely false, but it's a good place to start. Then it was developed and fully used by the Sumerians. The original Sumerian cuneiforms were ways to keep track of the debits and credits of things. And finally, it must be said that the ones that most benefit from this thing are the wealthy. They can not only keep track of their own goods, but and their holdings and what they owe and whatnot. But to a certain extent, even 5,000-6,000 years ago, could keep track of other people. We're talking about an area of sentience wherein everything is very flat, straightforward, kind of two-dimensional. You got one thing, you trade it for another thing. You got one thing, you get it, and you owe somebody another thing. Very interactional. And that's just about as far as it goes. It can become extremely complex. But the dynamic itself is very, very straightforward, and with little consideration of anything beyond it. So why go into this at all? It's because it's come to rule our lives. And it's ruled our lives, it rules our lives, or rather, there are people who rule our lives through economics, through a medium that doesn't really exist in the first place. There's no such thing. This very limited sentience of debits and credits is just that. It's very limited. It's an incomplete picture. When you move on in intelligence, eventually a point will be reached in which debits and credits really don't exist. Rather, there is a resonance, a harmony to things, and that harmony is more important and more truthful and more meaningful to the human heart than all that is implied by debits and credits, competitiveness, etc. Say you have two farmers. One farmer has a goodly flock of chickens, but he needs a horse. The other farmer has plenty of horses, but he's been thinking about starting his own chicken flock there. So they get together and they talk about it. The first farmer only needs one horse. That's all he needs, just that one horse. And the second farmer figures 2 hens and a rooster ought to do it, and hardly any time at all he'll have chickens all over the place. The first farmer doesn't need the best horse. He needs a horse to pull a plow and pull a wagon, that kind of thing. So they get together and make the swap. And the first farmer maybe throws in a couple of extra hens just for good measure. In the system that has been functioning for the last 6,000 years or so, the man who got the horse got the better deal, because a horse is worth a whole lot more than 3 or 4 chickens. But that's a system. It's a system. It's not according to what is most meaningful to the human heart, what is most meaningful to experience. So any outside system that impedes upon these 2 men coming together and making this simple trade, this system is erroneous. This system is oppressive in some way. So people talk about free enterprise and whatnot today. Well, actually what they're talking about is letting the corporations have their way on everything. That's what it comes down to. But free enterprise really depends upon an economic and social system wherein there is no imposition on those 2 men making that trade. And when this becomes organic, or when this is organic throughout society, things have a way of taking care of themselves. One of the benefits of having this lovely exchange between these 2 farmers is it increases the friendship between them, the love that they have for one another. And this would also carry itself through society. In the wholeness of things, debits and credits simply do not exist. That is, the whole idea of economics and debits and credits is a very, very limited, simplistic, restricted recognition of what is true and whole. We begin to come into that greater wholeness when there are no systems impeding the way, and people can act on true need rather than having to satisfy the needs of a system. Does this mean all systems are wrong and bad? Well, of course not. Systems are to help us adapt and survive. That's what systems are for. But the system, if it's held in place and enforced, that's where the problem comes in. Systems must be free-flowing. Like a river. Flowing down a river, and some places are deep and the water is slow. Some places it's shallow and choppy, and there are whirlpools and whatnot all throughout the river. And the systems that we use should be this way, should be that changeable. Because what's most important is what's right here, right now, the true needs of the moment. That's what's most important. So there's one particular take on the use of debits and credits. Imagine a world without them, and a world without any kind of imposing large structure. It's just people adapting and being in harmony with one another and being in harmony with their true needs. Their true needs. That's all.